Hi everybody. Well, we've got one of my favourite sessions is always the session where people who are right at the cutting edge, who are doing some of the boldest stuff out there, get to share what they're doing. And I'm going to, without further ado, hand over to Philip Oliver from Panavox, who is going to be introducing our panelists for the next session.
Thank you very much, Rick. When you build up like that, we can only disappoint. You should sort of say, like, play it down a bit. It's like, and then we can surprise people. Anyway, so very pleased to be here. We have some absolutely fantastic panelists with us today to discuss the innovative new schemes bridging the gap between games educators and studios, which has always been one of the key points of GamesEd. So let me just quickly do some introductions. I'm Philip Oliver. I've been in the games industry since the early 80s. I'm looking at my own words and I actually know this, but hey, it's kind of easier to do this. I've been making games since the early 80s with my twin brother Andrew. Quite often a lot of people know us as the Oliver twins, and we made the Dizzy series and lots of Codemaster games. But we went on to form Blitz Games, and during the 20 years that Blitz ran, we employed over 600 people. So I know a little bit about running teams and employing people, and obviously how important it is to engage with education as a result of that. We then went on to set up another company, Radiant Worlds, which we built up very quickly to 100 people and sold to Rebellion a couple of years ago. And now we just started another studio, Panavox, which is creating a new kind of entertainment. More about that in the future. It's all secret at the moment. Let me introduce you to our amazing panelists we have today. We've got Carrie Warwick, who's a program leader for games design and a senior lecturer at Games Art at University of Bolton. She's held several roles in the industry, including QA at Rockstar North, a generalist 3D artist for an independent Manchester-based company, and most recently a character artist at TT Games, working on games within the Lego franchise. As an educator, she's passionate about ensuring that the course content is relevant and up to standards required to prepare graduates with the skill set to step straight into positions in game studios. She is heavily involved in liaising with industry specialists to work alongside them to develop and evolve the course, and in arranging opportunities for her students to engage directly with potential employers. She's a STEM ambassador and is active in promoting games as a viable career option for girls at college level and younger by attending and helping to arrange workshops and talks to encourage girls to follow their passion and choose games. We have Eric Ismail who is the studio director for Fabric Games in Manchester. Errol has worked in the games industry for over 15 years. He spent most of his career at Electronic Arts, probably heard of that one, working for Brightlight, Maxis, and Create on the Battlefield, Star Wars, Madden, and Sim City franchises. Quite large, we've all heard of all of those. Errol graduated from Liverpool John Moores in 2006 with a degree in computer games technology. He's currently studying a part-time MBA at Manchester Metropolitan University. Excellent to have you along, Errol. And Kelly Sarman Jones is HR and Facility Manager at Payload Studios, an award-winning independent game developer. She studied film and TV at Warwick University, and since graduation has gained over a decade of experience working in creative industries, including 6 years working in the games industry. Since joining Payload, Carly has launched the studio's Inclusion and Diversity Initiative with the aim of promoting inclusion and diversity both within the studio and the wider games industry. As part of this, Carly organises and hosts the studio's Game On series of events. She's also part of the team behind the Tentacle Zone Incubator. More about that, I'm sure, later. A digital incubator for early stage founders, specifically from underrepresented groups. Carly is also a Limit Break mentor, video game ambassador, and regularly gives talks to students at events such as the UK student conferences. Gosh, that was a lot to get out, but some absolutely fantastic resumes there for some fantastic panelists. So we are discussing the innovative new schemes bridging the gap between games educators and studios. And I'd like to kick off first, if you don't mind, with the idea of the Industry Advisory Board for University and College Courses, which Carrie is doing an absolutely fantastic job on. And I'd like Carrie to talk us through how that's come about and how that's working.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip. So I think the idea of an industry advisory board for a university isn't necessarily a new idea. There've been things that have been around for quite some time now. But I think one of the ways that we are...
But they're more, I would say they're more essential rather than sort of optional, which is...
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that's happened in the past have been quite rare.
Yeah, they've been essential, but I think the way that we're kind of starting now to embed them as part of the course structure at the University of Bolton is massively benefiting our courses. What we're starting to do now is hold these regularly a few times a year, and we're inviting in industry guests from a range of different studios. So Fabric Games is one, for example, Avalanche, Lucid, a lot of different companies within the Northwest. And we're utilising the knowledge that these guests have to help ensure that the course content that we're teaching on all of our courses is relevant to the needs of industry. So just to give a little bit of background about the University of Bolton itself, we have 3 distinct game courses. We have games art, games design, and games programming. And they've been running for about 10 years now, just over 10 years in the kind of current format. The program leader team at the University of Bolton is relatively young. We've all kind of taken on the roles within the past couple of years. And we're trying to really shake up the courses and make sure that anything that's not relevant anymore, it's kind of took out. And we're working with industry to make sure that everything that we're putting on there is what's needed, essentially. An example of that is on the games design course, when we've spoken to industry, there seems to be a real need for graduates who have a skill set in UI and UX design. There's a lot of job positions going, and when we spoke to studios, they're struggling to find candidates who kind of fulfill that requirement. So alongside companies such as Fabric Games, we're starting to develop now a UI and UX design module, which is going to specifically kind of fill that gap. And this is something we do on a continuous basis. So we'll speak to studios, we'll give them a rundown of our courses, and kind of give them an idea of what our, I suppose, perfect graduate is going to be at the end of our course. And then based on that, we have conversations around areas that can be adjusted. And this is a continuous process. So it's not like we do this once and we're like, right, we're just going to run this now for years and years. We do this at the end of every semester, we try to, but as frequently as possible. And we get input from lots of different studios to do this.
And Errol is one of those on the receiving end of this, or the contributors. So would you like to speak about this?
Yeah, the advisory boards, I think, are a fantastic opportunity for us to make sure that students are learning the right things, and we're lucky enough to be at the sort of the cutting edge of development, working on sort of next generation platforms with next gen tools and processes. And I think it's a really great opportunity. And I think we have a responsibility, which we can talk about a little bit more, to make sure that students and program leaders of university courses are kind of looking ahead of what's coming. We want to make sure that every student that's studying now and that graduates in 3 years' time has a relevant skill set. So the opportunity, I think, to influence course content, to shape modules. I think we're talking to Bolton as well about hard surfacing at the moment and how important that is for kind of next gen asset creation. I think is just it's fantastic for us. Again, it's just about shaping that course content as much as we can to make sure that people are graduating with relevant skill sets and relevant knowledge. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. And Kylie, can you add to this?
Sorry, did you ask me or did you ask Carrie?
Yes, no, no, sorry, Kaylee, sorry. No, sorry, Kaylee. No, I was going to say, you're also an advisor, are you, into the same courses?
No. So we're not involved in the advisory board yet, but I was really interested to learn a little bit more about it from both Errol and Carrie, because I think it's it's a really great way, I think, to ensure that those courses are actually providing students with the skills that they need. And obviously from an HR perspective, you know, that's only a positive, you know, to make sure that the graduates coming out are at the highest level possible and actually equipped with the skills that you need in the real, you know, real life industry, as opposed to just in theory. So I'm really interested to kind of hear a bit more on that. For us, like, so far we've taken a slightly different approach in that we have launched a digital incubator, the Tentacle Incubator, which is a venture from Palo Studios. And through doing that, we have spoken to the University of Greenwich, who are one of our partners, and kind of learned more about the challenges faced by underrepresented students looking to set up their own studios. So the incubator is to help early stage founders, basically, who are looking to set up their own organizations and their own.
I think we're going to talk about that a lot more in a minute.
Yeah, so that's a slightly different take. So
that's a little bit of a trailer for what we're going to discuss next. No, that's fantastic. We believe then, Carrie, passionately, that universities should be doing this a lot more, but those that aren't, why aren't they doing it? And Errol, I'm going to ask you about why studios do you think don't do this more?
Yeah, I think potentially one of the reasons why some universities might not be doing it, or might not be doing it as much as they would like to, is sometimes kind of connections with industry, studios themselves. I think at our university, we're quite lucky in that a lot of the staff team are from industry. So we've already got some connections there to kind of reach out to. We've had a lot of our graduates who've gone into smaller studios. So again, that's a kind of more people we can reach out to. But some of the newer universities or anywhere where there might be a team who are kind of primarily from an academic background, it might be quite difficult for them to get in contact if they're not sure who the correct people are to reach out to. And I'd kind of just really say that I think, as well as universities reaching out, I think studios reaching out to universities as well is also a really good idea. If there are local universities to studios, it's always worth trying to get in contact with the team leaders. I think for the most part, they're going to be very receptive to like an email, just kind of introducing themselves. And I do think, yeah, that might be possibly one, I suppose, issue or kind of difficulty in running the industry advisory boards. I know another one that we've kind of come up against is, I guess it's time in arranging them. Like, they do take time to arrange and build connections with industry. And we do tend to have a problem where, because all different studios have got different projects, there's different NDAs involved, it's very difficult to get companies together in one industry advisory board. So we end up running multiple ones. And in terms of time from an academic point of view, trying to fit them in around teaching, around prep work, around our recruitment things, that in itself can be a little bit of a challenge. But from my point of view, that's one of the things that we should be focusing on. I think it's one of the most important kind of aspects of my job, I believe, in making sure that we are trying to contact industry, or we are trying to develop the course continuously. So it's worth the time to put aside to do it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have to say I completely agree with you. Errol, how do small studios, and Kaylee, I'm going to ask the same of you, how do you kind of prioritise the time, sort of, and set aside time to engage with education? But Errol, over to you first.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, for us as a studio, engaging with education is a critical part of our recruitment process. And again, as a Northwest employer, you know, we always said that Northwest students and universities would be a great support for us, and we could be a great support for them as well. It's you being part of advisory boards and engaging with universities, you do have to take a longer term view. You know, it's going to be very difficult, I think, just to pivot someone's course into, you know, sort of changing modules kind of through someone's degree. So you do have to take that kind of longer term view of, you know, this is a 3 to 5 year commitment to help shape that course content, to embed yourself.
Which I know that a lot of people actually have problems with. Obviously, I've run a studio for a long time, and I know that as an SME, you're always concerned about sort of the next milestone and the cash flow that only reaches out a couple of months. And the idea of actually spending time and resources on something with a 3-year win just seems unheard of. But I have to say, just as a studio head, I always used to do it, and we did end up being in business 3 years later and reaping the benefits. And I think that's really important. If you as a studio head actually believe you'll be in business in 3 years' time, then just put in a small amount of effort, because we're not talking about enormous amounts of effort for those paybacks. And actually, some of the paybacks are shorter term anyway. I mean, along the way, you are gaining lots of additional skills. You're putting people into doing a university talk, so putting your staff into, that's great character building for them. It's rewarding personally to them, and you even get some really short-term kickbacks. I mean, one of the examples that we found was that having gone into universities, you've actually now got a whole bunch of people you can kind of use as focus testers. And we've done that. We've actually had large groups focus test particular titles, games, artwork, ideas, and actually get some feedback straight from them, which they're quite happy to do. And this is real life projects, which they like getting involved in. So there are some short-term wins as well. Callie, sorry, I stole the stage a bit there.
I was just going to say, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Errol.
It is very, very difficult, I think, especially because we give primarily it's our kind of senior leads, and our director level talent that's involved in sort of engaging with Bolton, our university partner. It's always a very difficult decision when you have to decide between production work versus kind of studio initiatives, which is what this is. It's a company initiative. But again, we've seen such benefit from it as well. You talked about personal development there. We're maturing our leaders by having them engage with students, talk confidently.
I think it energizes them as well to when they just going into work. And I know we haven't been doing that for well, not going into work, just sitting at work. We haven't been doing that for quite a long time now. But when you're doing that, you become a little bit numb to sort of what a luxury it is to work in the games industry. And when you go out to universities, it energizes you to sort of where people sort of really look up to you and appreciate what you've achieved and what you've done, and it makes you feel grateful for the job that you're actually able to do, and also gives you the opportunity to sort of pass on some of that gratitude and try and support the next generation so that they can be as lucky as you've been. So it's really energizing, I believe.
Yeah, we find it's a great way as well to sort of combat project fatigue.
Yes,
we've had people on projects now for 18 months, 2 years, and even just stepping out for half an afternoon or a day, people do come back energized. They're engaging again with people that are really hungry and ambitious and want to enter the industry. And even for the most kind of hardened vets that we have at Fabric, it's energizing. It's the passion that comes through the students kind of filters straight back into the studio, which has been really, it's a positive uplift when you're in.
These are short-term wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Callie, over to you. Sorry.
I think, to be honest, I think you've both covered most of it, but I just add that, look, any kind of positive change usually takes time and effort, right? And it's the same when you're talking about driving positive change, for the future or for the industry, but it's absolutely worth doing. And I think in this case, there are a really clear business case for getting involved and engaging with education as well. And I think we'll talk about it more generally a bit later. But for us, I've seen firsthand that giving staff the opportunity to engage in some of these initiatives or some of these activities with educational institutions, it does improve engagement, and that's kind of backed up by various studies that show that if you're giving staff these opportunities, it improves their engagement with your company, like with the actual studio. They feel like,
and I've seen that
the studio is offering them a chance to be part of something bigger and to give back. and that's a really, really valuable thing. And of course that feeds into retention and, you know, people sticking around longer, people being more satisfied in the workplace, and all of these things which are really vital. You know, if you're running a business and you're running a studio, it's vital that you keep hold of that amazing talent that you've brought in. And so any way that you can help do that is only a positive. And then you've got the added benefit of actually investing in the future of the industry and helping the industry as a whole. Like, you know, why would you not want to do that? You know, so that's kind of, that's my
I completely agree. One of the things that we tried introducing, I can't remember how successful it was, but actually these days HR departments particularly like personal development of the student, of all the staff, and actually we try to enforce a system whereby, or encourage, I should say, rather than enforce, but that people did set aside something like 2 days a year for education engagement. And this will be brought up in their personal review. It's a sort of, well, what have you done? What did you mentor somebody remotely? Did you go in and do some talks at a local school, college, university? And actually, it is a really good part of personal development. And we were really positively pushing it and saying that you should expect to do a couple of days. And a couple of days in a whole year, it really isn't that much to give. And if it comes out that it's kind of expected, then people will sort of push themselves, because sometimes it's a little bit too easy to just do what's in front of you and under your nose and what you sort of do every day and what you've just been told to do. Whereas this actually made people be a little bit more proactive and think about it and think, actually, I would like to go along and give just a school talk or something, which is really easy to do. And of course, if you ever want to get to those bigger gigs and go and give a talk at GDC or something, you don't do it from, I've never spoken to anybody and now I'm doing GDC. You have to sort of go up the tiers and get the confidence up. I have to say, I'm not going to do GDC. It scares me, some of those audiences. But universities, you can do fairly easily.
Yeah, Phil, and I would just add that so just yesterday we had a panel for part of Games Careers Week with some payloaders, and you know, we just spoke about what their jobs involved in the day-to-day, and a couple of those people, you know, had kind of identified public speaking as something that they wanted to work on, and just by running that event and having that online panel, you know, for students, it gave them a kind of casual, kind of low-key, relaxed opportunity to practice that public speaking. And a couple of them came to me afterwards and said, you know, that was loads of fun, like, thank you for setting it up, that really helped. And I think it can be part of that personal development plan as well. I think
it's one of the things I found is public speaking is a very nerve-wracking thing to do. Everybody prior to going on stage or even on a Zoom call gets a little bit nervous, but if you do it to game students and you're the game expert, you're a god anyway. It's like, and you're speaking on your favorite subject and the one you're most knowledgeable about and the one they want to hear about. So it's kind of the easiest subject possible to sort of learn the skills. So we spoke earlier that we were going to come back to you, Callie, about your initiative, and I've actually accidentally lost the screen, but that you've created this incubation unit. Would you like to, or you're helping with this incubation unit, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I can give a little bit of background. So it's a digital incubator specifically for early stage founders from underrepresented groups. There's no cost to participants, thanks to our sponsors.
And what's it called?
The Tentacle Zone. So it's the Tentacle Zone incubator, and it's part of our Tentacle Zone kind of what's the right word? Basically, we've been running the Tentacle Zone since 2016, and that was mostly industry shows and then a co-working space, and then the incubator is kind of our next step, I guess, in that journey. And so it's a venture from Payday Studios, but involving you know, lots of different people. And in the case of the incubator, yeah, it's a digital incubator designed to basically equip early stage founders with the skills that they need to make a success of their business and their studio. And as I mentioned before, we partnered with the University of Greenwich to try and understand better some of the challenges, some of the kind of, I guess, shortcomings or difficulties that people from underrepresented groups face when students specifically from underrepresented groups face. So not all the participants are students, but some of them are. And that's kind of been our way to try and bridge the gap, I guess, and look at, okay, what skills, what networks, what connections do people need to be a success? And obviously we came at it from a kind of diversity and inclusion side of things as well. So ours is specifically for those early stage founders from underrepresented groups to try and kind of make sure that they stay in the industry and they can make a success within the industry. That's kind of a background.
But how's it actually working out? I mean, I have to say, I worry slightly encouraging students through incubators only because it's so tough. I mean, there are so many things that you have to get right to be successful. Oh, and a massive dollop of luck. Like, so even if you get everything right, you have to have a massive dollop of luck as well. So I always worry slightly about encouraging people to set up their own businesses, but equally, I've done it myself, and I kind of know the sort of the pros and cons. So how's it kind of worked out with your
yes,
fledgling companies?
yeah. So our take on it was more, this is for people who, you know, they're already early stage founders essentially. So they've
already done it. They've made the decision.
Yeah, they've
so
made
now you're just going to support them.
Yeah,
right.
they've made the decision. For some of them, they're still students, but they're working on this as a side project. For some of them, they might have a 9-to-5 job, you know, in a game studio or somewhere else. And for some of them, you know, they may already have closed a round of funding, or, you know, they may be further on in their journey and this is their full-time kind of job. And it's a real kind of mix from people who, you know, as I said, are still students, very early stage, to people who are maybe, you know, a little bit more developed. But yeah, so it's not so much about, okay, come to us and start a company. It's about, okay, you've got a company.
Now we can help you.
Yeah,
now we'll help you.
It's from being an independent developer, from having this network with the Tentacle Zone, from our, you know, our own work on D&I and what we've learned, and also through the Tentacle Zone, just for our co-working residents, we've been running a program of events, at least one event a week for the last year. So we've got some experience with running online events and things as well. So it was really a way to kind of amalgamate all of our learnings, I guess, and try and use those to kind of push positive change in the industry and try and offer, you know, whatever help we can. And we're really lucky to have some amazing partners and sponsors on board as well, including, let me get this right, Tonic Games Group, Creative England, Green Man Gaming, and Yuki as well. So they've all.
Oh right, so it's backed by some great people.
Yeah, so you know, we're not just trying to do this ourselves. We identified, you know, what we've learned and our skills, and then we've worked with, you know, the right people to bring it to fruition, I guess. In terms of how it's gone, we're only a couple of weeks in, so it's going well. But in terms of, okay, you know, what change has it actually brought about, or what positive impact has it had, we'll have to wait and see. But personally, you know, I've been super excited to see it all come together, and I'm really proud that, you know, as a studio and as a Tentacle Zone, we've backed this and we've done this and we've made it happen. And it hasn't been a small thing, you know. I've watched the team put a lot of work into making it a reality, and I'm super excited to watch the studios grow and hopefully, you know, see at least a handful of them be a success. And for me, you know, I spend a lot of time kind of talking about inclusion or diversity or generally, you know, driving positive change in the industry, but this is a really tangible, you know, we'll be able to watch these studios go through the program, go through the incubator and see what happens to them, and hopefully, you know, through what we offer them and through kind of upskilling and connections and all of that support that we're giving them, we'll be able to track their process and know that we've been, you know, kind of a small positive impact on it.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Somebody's banging away at the doorbell and there's nobody else in the house, which I thought was a good idea since I'm doing it. So I'm going to disappear for 2 seconds. How do people apply, and can they still apply, or is it full?
Good question. I can cover that while you you go off and answer the door. Applications have closed for this cohort, so unfortunately no chance to apply for the moment, but who knows, hopefully there'll be more opportunities in the future. I see Rick stepped in. So.
I thought I might just for 1 minute. I wanted to ask a question actually, Kelly, because is there a formal curriculum of or series of training that you're putting you're putting the cohort through?
I actually lost a connection there for a second. Can people still apply, or is it closed? Because I believe the website now says it's closed.
Yes, that's correct. Applications are shut, and then actually Rick just asked a question about kind of the syllabus, the program. I'm gonna carry on chatting and assume that he'll sort out the audio in a second. Yes, so we have you know, a lot of work's gone into putting the program together, identifying the needs of the different studios and founders taking part, and kind of matching those up with. We've got a lot of amazing tutors that we're bringing in. As I said before, you know, we're not trying to cover everything ourselves. You know, we're bringing in the experts, we're bringing in other people to help with it. But yes, it is all it's very kind of organised and hopefully well thought out curriculum and program for the participants to take part in.
How long does it last?
Well, that's a good question. It's and I'm having a complete mind blank. It's a couple of months. I will double check on that. But yeah, it's a couple of months.
Fantastic.
I do apologise.
Philip, are you back, or shall I?
I am back. I managed to lose
Great.
the signal completely. I messed up. Sorry. Right, that's the problem of people delivering alcohol. They can't just leave it. I'm guessing that's some kind of Easter gift, but it was alcohol, and I have to sort of say I'm old enough. Luckily, this one didn't actually ask for the photo ID. I had that last week, and it's like, seriously? Anyway. Okay, well, fantastic. I think we did have one question come in, which I think we've now answered with the just quickly talking about whether it was closed or not. If there are any more questions, please do throw them in. The other thing is, I just wanted to do almost a little bit of a kind of a conclusion and a wrap up of what are the advantages and disadvantages. And I think the advantages we've been calling out quite a lot of engaging universities, engaging with education, engaging with studios, engaging with education. But can we go through? I'm going to actually say what are the negatives, because I think we've all sort of been promoting all the positives. So why wouldn't people do it? Why aren't people doing it more? Bearing in mind it is such a good and positive thing to do. Who would like to take that one?
Yeah, I don't mind just starting. I think one of the potential downsides, I guess, especially from a studio point of view, is that when we do have companies like Fabric come in and they help our students, for example, they're currently embedded within our third year major projects module, which is for all of our students on art, design and programming. And they've got an option to work towards a brief that Fabric have set. The students don't have to do that. It's an optional thing. So they can either choose to work on their own major project, or they can focus it on Fabric's brief. So this is super beneficial for the students, because sometimes I think with major projects, they can be quite open. So to have something for them to focus on with a little bit of structure can definitely help students. And it's getting them the opportunity to get in front of companies like Fabric and showcase a very specific skill set that studio might be looking for. But a potential downside is that the students might not necessarily go on to work at that company. So I mean, I can probably pass over to Errol. He can speak a little bit more about it, but I think that is potentially one downside that I can see industry kind of bringing up. Yeah,
basically industry spends a lot of time with a university with certain students, only for them to then go off to other places, even though they wanted to offer them a job. That definitely happens. Errol.
Yeah, no, we've hired actually, sort of back end of December, we hired 2 students from Bolton, and we had a hard time getting them to join us. We were up against some very strong competition, much bigger studios than us. But I think it's.
But it swings and roundabouts in some ways, isn't it? Because sometimes you may win, but sometimes you lose. But equally, you may win in hiring somebody that was mentored by another studio from another university. So you may actually win from that side anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping that because we're embedded with Bolton for the next 5 years, that students will get to know our mid-levels, our leads, our directors. We're really hoping that a lot of that talent does filter into Fabric after graduation. But there are 50 students graduating from Bolton this year, and Fabric can't take them all. We can take, so certainly this year we can take a small percentage, and then hopefully next year, because we've been working for sort of 2 years at that point with students, that we'll be able to take more. I think it benefits the industry, to be honest with you. Like it's that for me, again, I think we have that responsibility as a studio to help make students ready for the industry. There's a lot of students coming out of education now that just simply will never work in the games industry. Their skill set is outdated. It will take a huge amount for them to make that step. So for us, the more people that we can get into industry, the more students that we can play a part in their education, I think will benefit all of the local companies and hopefully the industry as well. So there is a part of me that as effectively as a studio head, where I have to think selfishly and think, I want all of that talent, all of that great mentor talent in Fabric, but also
you don't want that payroll.
Not at the moment, no. But there's another part of me as well that again just wants to play a part in people's education. If it goes into other studios, the fact that Fabric has been a part of it, I think benefits us in the longer term. Whether it's now or whether it's in 3 years or 5 years.
And just a responsible thing to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree. One thing actually I found, you actually said about students going into industry, is I found that they were actually very reluctant to actually go back into education and go and give those talks, and yet they're the best people. And I actually think that the universities should almost be encouraging people when they found employment in the industry to say, we're expecting you to come back and talk to the next year, to say what it was like and how you got in there, and to basically give some mentoring talks. But I always found that they were the shyest of people, and I couldn't do that. No, they wouldn't want me back. And it's like the alumni are the best advocates for your course almost, but they're the best. They're at the same level, or a little bit above, as your current students. So they're very approachable. When I go in and talk to students and everything, I'm a million years apart from them and their experiences today. I can tell them how to code 8-bit. It doesn't matter. It's like, it's not relevant. What's 8-bit? So actually having those alumni going back in to the same courses that they came from, I think are absolutely fantastic. And I'd really encourage all universities to ask their students to please do that, and make it almost an expectation. We expect to see you back here next year several times.
It's a fantastic. We found it's a great stat for me and Carrie. So 20% of Fabric's employees are ex-Bolton graduates. Whether it's some sort of 2-3 years ago. It's a great recruitment tool. It's a great for students to see success stories coming out of those degree programs that they're on. And I think it's amazing that we've got a fantastic artist at the moment in the studio who graduated from Bolton 2-3 years ago. He can go back in and say, these are the things that you need to do to be ready for industry. These are the things that I wish I knew in my 3rd year or my 2nd year or my 1st year about the skills that I need, or even those softer skills, which we don't often teach. I had a conversation with someone the other day where I said, God, I wish we would have focused more on collaboration and working within teams, because when I came to Fabric, I wasn't, I used to do a lot of things solo, and now I'm working with 5, 6, 7
everything's
multi-discipline team. And
everything's teamwork in business. And people kind of need to get that.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I think it's also up to the studios to offer those opportunities and encourage
absolutely
to do that as well, because you know, I think especially if you're quite junior, you know, you might not have that confidence to be like, yeah, of course people want to hear from me, you know, they want to hear about how I've made it into the industry, I'm a success, you know, you don't necessarily view yourself in that way. So I think that's where, you know, studios can really help. And I guess going back to you know, the idea of why people wouldn't do it, or some of the cons, I think some of it is, you know, the time it takes to organize these things, you know, from a studio perspective. And you know, last year we were lucky enough to partner with a local school to help out with one of their online learning projects. So this is slightly younger, so it's for year 9, and we you know, a few of the studio gave some feedback for some articles that they'd written for a mock magazine, and we also went in and did a talk, and it was a really amazing thing to be involved in. But it did, you know, it took time to coordinate, and we had to kind of build that into our plan and our resources. Now, one of the ways around this is, of course, is to get involved in something like the Video Games Ambassador Scheme, which Payload have just signed up for. So we're kind of in the process of rolling out. But it's run by Intergames in partnership with Yuki, and they basically kind of bridge that gap. So they talk to the educational institutions and find opportunities that people, you know, people can give careers talks or master classes or get involved, you know, as mentors, and then they link those up with kind of real life studios in the games industry, and it takes the burden of organizing off you. So, you know, I'm not having to find opportunities for people to volunteer or take part in all these cool initiatives. You know, those opportunities are there. So, you know, in terms of our experience with it, we're still very, very early days, but I would encourage people, you know, if they haven't heard of it or they haven't kind of looked at it, to visit the Video Game Ambassadors website, and you know, it's a great way to kind of not have to organize it yourself.
And into games.
Yes, so yeah, so it's run by Intergames. Yeah, so
either routine gets you the same place. I mean, it does sound like a good one, because you're not necessarily going to sort of know who to call up at the local college, the local university, and you do feel like you're pushing yourself upon them. Whereas actually, if there's just a matchmaker, which it turns out the Video Game Ambassadors are, then you just put your name down, and then they can do the matchmaking for you. Sounds a fantastic scheme, and I've heard about it lots before. I do actually have a question from the audience. Kitra Taylor wants to get into teaching of video games, just finishing a master's. They say they've heard of the Kickstart program. Is that an option for somebody who wants to actually teach games related content? And what would be the best route into teaching games?
Yes, I mean, the Kickstart program, if that's the Into Games kind of Video Games Ambassador program, I definitely say that's a good way to start.
I think this is to full-time teach.
Okay, but yeah, I think even just kind of getting some experience, just from my point of view, I went straight into education from industry, and I had no teaching experience at all before I started at the university. I did my teacher training on the job there. But prior to that, I had gone back. I was actually a graduate from Bolton University. I did the Games Art course. And during my time in industry, I went back and did talks. I did kind of industry talks on how to approach like an interview, how to develop a portfolio. And then I did some like more specific workshops that were kind of skill-based workshops. So doing those kind of things helped with my confidence in knowing that, you know what, I can do this. If I wanted to go into education, I can do this as a career. So I think the stuff with the Video Games Ambassador program, if it's something that you're looking at doing, then that's definitely a great kind of experience. It gives you a little bit of a taste of the things you would be doing on a day-to-day basis.
So Kitra says that already has a lot of educational experience. It's more the games skills experiences that are the problem. So it's kind of transitioning across to teaching games. So where are they going to get those skills to then take their educational talent and apply it? So, I mean, you obviously went to industry. I mean,
yeah.
But that's going to be hard, isn't it? I mean, you're going to have to go back.
Can I just?
Errol?
You know, it's really important for me that people teaching games education have worked in this industry. Like it's. I know that sounds really hard.
That's probably not what Kitra wants to hear.
No,
but I'll be honest. I won't leave you standing there on your own saying that. I kind of agree, and I'm really happy to hear that Carrie. That's the route that she took. It is so important to understand exactly how the industry works and being in the thick of it, to then take that back into education and to be telling the next generation what it's really like.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges facing games education in the UK, is that there are lots of people teaching it that have never done it. And making games is really hard. And I think it requires experience, it requires knowledge of the process. And like, I don't want to put people off from going into games education, but for me, I would only work with an establishment with program leaders and course tutors that have been a part of this industry, because it's really hard to make video games, and it requires, you know, the skill set is constantly changing. Like, for me, I've never quite understood how, you know, Carrie's an amazing artist. She's incredibly talented and she's worked in the industry. So when I know Carrie's teaching something to the students, I know it's relevant and I know the quality that she can deliver. So I don't have to worry about Carrie teaching outdated principles of delivering a quality that... And
if Carrie says somebody's up to it, you know, they're up to it.
It's a simple, it's simple for me. If Carrie goes, this person is a great artist, you know, that I stand up and will always listen to that. And again, I think the biggest challenge facing the games industry is there's a lot of people educating that have never done it before. And that's why the quality of education, I think, has slipped.
So I think unfortunately, the answer to Kitra is the route to becoming an educator for the games industry is to go via the games industry. That is the recommended route. For
me, yeah.
Which I'm sorry, it's not what you want to hear, because that's not particularly easy. So yeah, okay. Katra says I'm willing to. So in which case, it's start reaching out to the games companies, and also what are the skills and the disciplines you want to go down, because you can't just say I want to be a games developer. It's like, are you an artist, a designer, a script writer, a producer, a QA? What are the skill set that you're bringing to a studio? The more specialist. A bit of advice that I give to people looking to go into the games industry: the more generalist you are, the smaller the studios you can consider, because they need a jack of all trades. And the more specialist you are, the more you look at the medium to bigger size studios. So if you're a fantastic concept artist, but you can only do concept, you can't model in 3D on sort of Maya or Max or whatever, then you would go for a very medium-sized to large company who will day in, day out, just need the concept artist. They don't need anything else because it's part of the pipeline. You'll hand that off to somebody else. A smaller studio, on the other hand, will say, I need somebody that can do the concept, the coloring, the art, the 3D, the 2D, the UI. You are the artist for this game. You need to do it all, kind of thing. What people don't require these days is people who are programmers and artists. You don't need... It's very, very rare that you find somebody who is, I am the programmer and the artist, and no studio really looks for it. It's fantastic if it ever comes up, but it's very rare. So you can pick a discipline and then pursue that discipline. And I also say to students, make it very clear on your CV, as well as the portfolio, obviously, of exactly what your specialism is and how specialized you actually want to be. Okay, I hope we've answered that. Technical artists, yes. Carrie, can we quickly go through all the different artist roles that you could possibly consider, because Kitra is interested in the art side of things. So very quickly, all the different positions of artists.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, if we was going to talk about like a larger studio with a lot of kind of more specialized roles, then, like you said, concept art, character art, vehicle art, prop art, weapon art, environment art, shader art, lighting artist, VFX artist, a cinematics artist, technical art. So that's going to potentially involve software such as Houdini or Substance Designer, which are being used more and more in the kind of larger studios. What else is there going to be? Things like rigging would probably come under technical art, so kind of adding skeletons into characters and things like that.
Mocap, is mocap considered in the art role of directing mocap?
I'd say so.
And then cleanup?
Yeah, there was one of the students who was on the course at the same time as me. He now works as a lead character artist at Climax Studios. And in his previous role, he set up a more capture studio as in there. So definitely that's a route you could go down.
I don't
And
think
then-
you said animator, but I think animator's obviously there.
I think
Yeah, animator as well. There's so many.
Carrie's touched on a couple of disciplines there, which are really, which most universities aren't really thinking or looking about. So, like dedicated courses for games animation, I think is critical because the demands for cinematics, characters, just keeps increasing, and the technical art as well. So lighting and VFX, those now are dedicated disciplines within the industry, and we're not teaching them. We cover them maybe as a module, but like we have dedicated roles for VFX artists and lighters within our studio, and there is no real pipeline for talent kind of rolling off courses into studios. So that's definitely where one area that education can really focus on. Well, animation, VFX and lighting, not together because they are separate disciplines now. I think we need to recognise that.
Fantastic. Right, so we do need to start wrapping up. Do we have any more questions? And I have to say that there seem to be 2 question panels, and I've only been looking at one of them. So I've got to quickly have a quick peruse and just check if there's any other questions that have come in that I haven't done. Whilst I'm quickly doing that, just looking down, I don't think there are. I'm just going to say that do we have any other sort of main conclusions or takeaways that we want people that have been listening to this session? What are the takeaways that you would want to give? Callie, you haven't. Harold was just speaking last. Callie.
Sure. I mean,
main takeaways.
I think we've covered some good stuff in here. I've certainly learned a lot from Errol and Carrie, but I think just make the time to be involved. Hopefully we've demonstrated that there is really clear business case, whether it's talking about the short-term benefits to your employees or whether it's talking about building in your own pipelines and pathways for recruitment. There's some really clear kind of business benefits to engaging with education, and as a first step, I'd say video game ambassadors is a great way to start. If you want to get more involved and you want to see what opportunities are out there, but you don't want to put the time into to do what Errol's done, what Fabric have done, which is just do it on their own back and put time and resources into it. The VGAs is kind of a nice starting point, I think, and then see what you can do. I'll stop waffling now and hand over to the others.
Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just to reiterate what Callie's just said, but from an educational point of view, making the time to work with studios, to get guests in, it can be difficult with a full-time kind of like academic workload, but it's well worth the benefits. Students are happy because they're seeing industry, they're getting feedback from industry. Like we can do portfolio reviews and we tell the students something and they won't listen to us, but then someone from industry saes the same thing and like, yes, I'll change all of that, I'll do that.
Ooh, I can give feedback. I have to say, I'm usually pretty brutal, but actually, I mean, that's one of the things that I know that lecturers have told us, that they work with these students all the time. They have to be encouraging and positive, whereas somebody from industry that comes in and kind of say it a little bit more like it is, which is that won't be accepted in a game that ships. We would have to go and rework that completely. We would have to start again. And I have to say that when me and my brother have gone in and done portfolio reviews, we're quite harsh, but we do it because you wouldn't get away with that in industry. You wouldn't that quality, if the quality's not there, it won't be accepted. You won't be offered a job. And if you are offered a job, it won't last very long if you can't create stuff that is industry quality and shippable. And that's just the way of life. The studio's not going to accept it.
Yeah, 100%. So when we do have like guests from industry coming in doing portfolio reviews, the students are much more willing to take that feedback on board because they know that these are the people who are going to be hiring them. So from that point of view, or not, yeah. Yes. So from that point of view, it's massively beneficial. And I guess in terms of soft skills for the students as well, being able to speak to industry and having to put on a professional face, whereas at university, we're quite pally with the students, so they're not necessarily kind of always on the best behaviour, but having to learn how to be professional, present yourself well,
sure.
Be able to speak about your own work and being able to kind of criticise your own work as well. I think developing that type of skill set is very useful.
100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. I completely agree. In fact, one of the other points I was going to make earlier was that this idea of the staff from a studio going in and presenting when they're allowed to, and when NDAs don't stop them from doing it, actually presenting your work in person to people, and actually seeing that direct feedback and talking about it. It focuses why you're doing what you're doing, and what's important and what isn't important. I mean, we all talk about minimalist design, and too often people kind of get a little bit carried away in the wrong direction, and it's like, just focus. What is it you're actually, what is the game you're trying to create, and what is the experience you're trying to create, and focus on that. And actually, if you have to talk to people directly and take critique back in the other direction, it allows you to sort of have a focus, and I think it's really helpful. And I see that Rick has joined us, which would suggest we're getting close to wrapping up. How are we doing, Rick?
No, look, that was a fascinating session. I've come in a bit early because I've got a question for Carrie and a bit of a follow-up for Errol, which is that you're working so closely with industry. What is the process that you're using to change curriculum based on the feedback from a really embedded developer like Fabric? Are you making large-scale changes, or are you doing little tweaks that gradually change it? Or are you having to go to the dean and saying, actually, we need a really big course correction?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the type of adjustments that we make. At our university, our modules are written in such a way that they're quite open-ended. We've obviously got learning outcomes that we need to hit, but in terms of assignment briefs, they're written in such a way that we can change them year on year to update things such as the software that we're using, techniques that we're including within them. For example, the UI UX module that we're looking at bringing in, that one is taking a little bit longer because we have to go through the standards kind of processes of the university. It's not something we can change overnight. Whereas another example would be, we have a fundamentals of 3D module, which is taught to artists and designers. And historically, they've done the same content. But based on our industry advisory boards, the design students don't need to learn 3D to the same level as the artists would. So what we've done is we've basically done split briefs where the artists do one brief, which focuses on prop creation. And then the designers, they will learn the basics of 3D, but they learn it in the context of level design, creating white boxes and blockouts and things like that. So those types of changes at module level are very easy for us to do and very quick to do, in the fact that we can run a semester, get feedback from industry, the industry can look at the actual results of that module, and then we can change it. So by September, it's in place for the next one. Whereas larger module changes, we're looking probably a year to do that.
Right, but I wonder if that flexibility, that ability to pivot, not major parts of the curriculum, is going to make a big difference to industry. Because, I mean, Errol, does that responsiveness, is that a really important part of that relationship?
Absolutely, yeah, because our business changes every day. I mean, the industry changes so quickly as well. You need to be agile and flexible enough with what's happening in the industry. Absolutely, you know, we could, again, we could bring, we could work on a project that requires something that we've never done before. We don't have any experience, and to be able to kind of filter that back into Carrie and say, by the way, yeah, in 2 years' time or even in 12 months, this is a skill set that we're going to desperately need. It's fantastic for us. We need that flexibility in education. I think it can't be so, again, it's like if the new game engine came along tomorrow that everyone adopted, education needs to be able to pick that up.
I have to say I completely agree, and I think that if studios spend the time talking to education, and education can't actually react to it because of their own internal politics and their own systems, then studios will stop spending their time giving the advice if it doesn't appear to be changing anything. So I think, yeah, it's a very good point that those modules need to be written flexibly enough so that they can be constantly updated and reflecting what the industry is asking for.
Well, I think we need to bring the
session. You're an expert in this area.
We're going to bring the session to a close, but thank you so much to Philip. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing the work that you're doing right at the cutting edge. I think because I've taken it over, I think we're going to come back in 10 minutes time for a session on Games Careers Week. So at 20 past, join me, Declan and Andy to talk about what we've been doing with Games Careers Week, what's happened, where it came from, and what we're hoping might happen next year. We'll see you shortly.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.